The night Camille reached over and drank from my mug, the one I had just made, the one sitting 2 inches from her hand, she didn't even glance up from her sketchbook. She just set it back down, licked her bottom lip, and said, "Yours always tastes better." I pointed out we used the exact same tea bags. Earl Grey, the orange box from the No Frills on Bloor, same kettle, same water from the same Brita in the same fridge we'd been sharing for 7 months. She looked at me then, her mouth curved, slow and deliberate, like she'd been waiting for precisely that argument. Maybe it's not the tea, Beckett. That was the moment I understood we were in trouble. My name is Beckett Hale. I'm 29. I work as a data analyst for the city of Toronto, which means I spend my days making spreadsheets about traffic patterns that elected officials sometimes read and mostly file somewhere dark and permanent. I moved into the 2-bedroom on Palmerston Avenue 4 years ago because the rent was reasonable by Toronto standards, which is to say it was merely shocking rather than criminal, and because the landlord fixed things without being asked twice. For the first 3 years, I had the place to myself. Then, my best friend Tobias got a job in Calgary and took his half of the utilities with him. I put up an ad, interviewed 6 people, and turned down the guy who kept asking whether the building allowed indoor sports, and the woman who referred to her houseplants as her emotional support team. Camille Okafor showed up on a Thursday in October. She wore paint-stained jeans and a denim jacket with a small enamel pin of the Canadian flag on the collar, slightly crooked. She was 26, a graphic designer who worked freelance out of her room, and she asked exactly 2 questions during the walkthrough: whether the east-facing window got morning light, and whether I had strong feelings about noise between 10 and midnight. I said the window got good light. I said I went to bed at 11:30. She said, "I'll be quiet by 11:15. I gave her the room. I told myself it was purely practical. Split the $3,200 rent, share groceries when convenient, separate shelves in the fridge, no drama. I wrote none of that down because writing it down would have implied I thought I needed reminders. I needed reminders within the first week. Camille worked from home. I went to the office on Yonge and King. We had different schedules and similar kitchen hours, and she had a way of existing in a room that made it feel like she'd always been there. She left Sharpie notes on her food. Camille's. This means you. A small skull drawing on her oat milk. She burned scented candles while she worked, so the apartment always smelled like whatever she was feeling that week. Wood smoke in November. Something like citrus and cold air in December. I never asked what that one was. I just started noticing when it changed. She had opinions about everything. She thought the city's new bike lane design was poorly executed and spent 20 minutes explaining why to me, even though I'd helped draft part of the consultation data. She had a strict ranking of patine places within a 10-minute walk and would not be moved on the subject. She sorted the green bin and the blue bin correctly, and without being asked, which in this city is either civic virtue or an unusual talent. The rule, my private, unspoken, never written down rule, was simple. 2 years earlier, I had dated someone I worked with, a woman named Amara from the city planning division. It ended after 4 months, and it ended badly enough that I learned what it felt like to have heartbreak as a standing item on your shared calendar. After that, I made myself a promise. Nobody who complicated my daily life. No one I couldn't leave without rearranging everything else. Nobody complicated my daily life more than Camille Okafor. The thing was, she did it without trying. She sang off-key to whatever she had on while she cooked and got genuinely annoyed when she forgot the words. She asked my opinion on her design work, and then argued with me if she disagreed, which was almost always, which was fine because she was usually right. She noticed things. If I came home quiet, she'd look up from her desk and say, "Bad day today?" and leave it at that. If I worked late and forgot to eat, there'd be a bowl of something in the microwave with a sticky note that just said, "Eat this," in her handwriting. I told myself that meant she was a considerate roommate. I was lying to myself, but I was very convincing. Then Tobias came back from Calgary for a visit in March and brought his girlfriend Jess, who had known Camille from their time at OCAD and had the social instincts of someone trained to find load-bearing walls in a room. The 4 of us had dinner at the apartment on a Friday, which Camille called nothing special, and which involved a carefully set table, candles from the shop on Dundas, and a lamb tagine she'd spent the afternoon making because she said she needed to use up the chickpeas. I opened wine. The LCBO had been out of what I usually bought, so I grabbed something from the vintages section, a Syrah recommended by a man who seemed confident about it and was probably right. I didn't mention what it cost. We ate, and it was good, easier than it had any right to be. Tobias told stories about Calgary winters. Jess asked how Camille and I had met, which set off the usual argument about the initial interview. He asked me whether I had references, Camille told them, for a room. Like I was applying for security clearance. The previous applicant had borrowed a houseplant. It was an IKEA succulent. It's the principal. The principal, Camille said, turning to Jess with the expression of someone who has rehearsed this, is that he had a spreadsheet. An actual spreadsheet. With weighted criteria. Jess looked at me. Did you score her? I evaluated all applicants equally. He gave me an 8, Camille said, out of 10. That's a strong score. He docked 2 points because I had opinions about dishwasher loading. Handle down, Camille said immediately. Forks handles down, it's safer. It scratches the finish. Then buy forks with better handles. And yet, Jess said, in the exact tone of someone winning without effort, here you are. Camille looked at me across the table. Just for a second, not joking. Something crossed her face that wasn't quite a smile. I looked back. The room kept moving around us, but I felt the pause like a dropped stitch in something carefully knit. Then Tobias reached for the bread, and the moment dissolved. After dinner, Jess and Tobias moved to the couch with their wine, and I started clearing plates. Camille came to stand beside me at the counter, closer than the size of the kitchen required. You ranked me, she said quietly, not looking at me. You knew that going in. I didn't know I was an 8. She turned. What would a 10 have looked like? I didn't have an answer. I was ready to say out loud. That's a different thing from not having one. From the couch, Tobias said, Are you two narrating the dishes, or is this something we should leave for? Eat your dessert, I said. We don't have dessert, Camille said. Then go get some, I said. There's a place on College. Jess stood with the cheerful efficiency of someone who has read the room and made a decision. Right. Back in 20. She grabbed her jacket, then paused to look at Camille and then at me. Maybe 25. Tobias gave me a look on his way out that I pretended not to catch. The door closed. The apartment went quiet in the way it only does late at night when the street winds down to occasional headlights through the blinds. Somebody in the unit above us was walking around in shoes they should have removed at the door. Camille reached past me to rinse a plate and didn't pull back quickly enough, or I didn't move, and for a moment her arm was against mine. Beckett, she said. I handed her a plate to dry. You don't have to answer the 10 question, she said. I'm not asking. I know. I'm just. She set the plate down and turned. 7 months. That's a long time to live with someone and not know where you actually stand. You stand in the kitchen, I said, at 11:17, after everyone else has left. She almost smiled. You notice the time. I notice a lot of things. So do I, she said quietly. We stood there with the faucet running between us, and I felt the whole weight of the last 7 months in the 6 inches of space between us. The candles she'd picked out on Dundas. The lo-fi playlists that drifted under my door when she was working late. The way she looked up from her sketchbook when I came home, like she was checking to see if I was okay. Then my elbow caught the wine glass. I watched it happen the way you watch things you cannot stop. The dark arc, the splash across the counter, the line of Syrah that hit my sleeve and spread across the front of my shirt. Camille went very still. Then she looked at my shirt, then at me. Her mouth curved. You know, she said, not moving. You don't have to keep wearing that. The kitchen went silent. My heart did something unreasonable. Camille. Just an observation. She reached for the tea towel on the oven handle and pressed it lightly against my forearm, blotting the sleeve. The shirt can probably be saved if you soak it, but, she tilted her head, it doesn't have to be saved tonight. I looked at her. At the careful way she was not quite smiling. at the towel in her hand and the fact that she hadn't stepped back. The wine was an accident, I said. The wine was an accident. She met my eyes. The rest of it wasn't. I didn't move for a long moment. She kept her hand on my arm, patient in a way she'd never been in any other context. Camille had opinions about poutine rankings and the Sierra and the city's bike infrastructure. She was not, generally, patient. This was apparently the exception. I made a rule, I said, after my last relationship, the one from work. I heard you tell Tobias that story. The walls aren't that thick. Then you know why. Beckett, her voice was quiet. You already broke the rule. You broke it around month 3. I'm just the last to find out. I laughed. It came out uneven. She smiled. Not the careful one, but the real one, the one she used when she won the poutine argument or found a design error in something I'd assumed was finished. I took the towel from her hand, set it on the counter. Tell me something, I said. Why tonight? She was quiet for a moment. Because apparently 7 months of leaving you the corner piece every time I made anything wasn't a clear enough signal. I thought you just liked cooking. I like cooking, she said. That's not what the corner piece was about. I understood then, all at once, the way you understand something you'd already known without quite letting yourself know it. Camille, I said. Yes? What would a 10 have looked like? She looked at me for a long moment. Then she reached up, put her hand against my jaw, and kissed me. It wasn't tentative. It wasn't accidental. It was very much a woman who had made a decision and saw no reason to be coy about it. I put my hand at the back of her head, and she made a small sound against my mouth that came apart something in me that had been very carefully constructed for a very long time. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. That, she said, that's what a 10 looks like. I was still holding her face. She let me. I don't want to mess this up, I said. You've made this place feel like somewhere I actually want to come home to. I don't want you to lose that if this goes wrong. Her expression shifted, quieter. I've moved 4 times in 3 years, she said. I can pack a kitchen in under 40 minutes. I know exactly how long it takes for a place to stop feeling like home. She pressed her hand flat against my chest over the spreading wine stain. This already feels like home. That happened before tonight. I looked at her for a long moment. Can we be honest? I asked. I just kissed you in a wine-stained kitchen. I think we're past polite. Then, honestly, I don't want there to be an invisible ledger. This is your place as much as mine, regardless of what this becomes. Her eyes searched mine. That is the most functional thing anyone has ever said to me in this context. We're not in a relationship. No, her hand was warm through my wet shirt. Not yet. The front door opened downstairs. I'm announcing myself. Tobias called from the stairwell at a volume that suggested he'd been counting the seconds, so nobody has to pretend anything. Camille stepped back, not far, and handed me the towel like nothing had happened, except her cheeks were flushed and my shirt was a lost cause. Jess walked in with a paper bag from the bakery on College, looked at us once, and said, "Did we leave long enough?" "Longer would have been appreciated," Camille said. Tobias passed behind me and clapped a hand on my shoulder, carefully avoiding the stain. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. After they left, we did the rest of the dishes in comfortable quiet. The apartment settled into the late-night stillness of a building where everyone else has gone to bed. Camille dried the last glass and set it on the shelf. "Saturday," she said. "What?" "Dinner, a real one. Just us." She looked over. "Unless you were going to ask me, in which case." "Saturday," I said. Her smile was slow. "Okay." She picked up her sketchbook from the counter and paused in the doorway. "For the record, the mug, the tea. I've been doing it for 3 months." "I know," I said. She blinked. "You knew?" "I switched to chamomile so you'd have something to take." For a moment she just stared at me. Then she laughed, surprised and completely real, and disappeared down the hall. I stood in the kitchen in my ruined shirt and felt something I hadn't felt in a while, like the good part had already started and I'd only just noticed. Saturday was cold the way Toronto is cold in March, not reluctantly, but with real commitment. We went to a small place on Harvard with low ceilings and tables so close together that you're always aware of the couple beside you. Camille wore a dark green dress and red lipstick I hadn't known she owned, and I forgot every reasonable sentence I'd prepared in the cab over. "You look," I started. "Devastating," she said. "You can just say it." I was going to say "you look like you." She seemed to like that better. She picked up the menu, looked at it for 3 seconds, set it down. "Tell me about the work relationship," she said. "Not gossip. I want to understand what you're working around." So I told her. 4 months. Good at first, then pressurized the way things get when someone knows both your personal habits and your calendar, and the distance between them keeps shrinking. When it ended, I had to learn to be professional in a meeting room where we'd once laughed at the same bad presentation. "You weren't stupid for wanting her," Camille said. I ignored things I should have read earlier. I stayed in my last one about 8 months past when I knew. She straightened her fork. He was fine. Not wrong. Just fine. And I'd already given notice on my apartment, and I was tired of packing, so I stayed. She met my eyes. "I hate packing." "I know. I want to stay with this." Her voice was level. "That's the thing I'm managing." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Then we don't rush," I said. "We're honest. We say when something feels wrong before it becomes a thing we're working around in silence." "That sounds very you." "I have a spreadsheet." She laughed. "Of course." "It's blank. I didn't know what criteria to use." She squeezed my hand. "Start with, she steals tea, lets candles burn all the way down, leaves color swatches on the bathroom counter." 8 out of 10, I said. "Upgrade me." We walked home slowly through the march, cold, shoulders together, and stopped at our building door under the hallway light that had been flickering since October because the landlord kept saying he'd look into it. Camille looked up at it. "We should call about that again." "I've emailed 3 times." "I'll call Monday." She turned to me. "I'm gonna kiss you now. Under this terrible light, with cold hands, before we go upstairs and have to decide how careful we're actually being." I put my hand against her cheek, cold under my palm. "Are we being careful?" "We've been careful for 7 months, she said. "I think that counts." She kissed me then, sure and unhurried, her hands in my jacket lapels, the wind moving down Palmerston from circles north of us. I pulled her closer. She made the sound she'd made in the kitchen, and I knew I would remember this corner of the street for an unreasonably long time. When she stepped back, her lipstick was smudged. She looked at me with something brighter than I'd expected, like she'd been holding it for a while. "I like you a lot," she said. "More than 8 out of 10, I said. She smiled and took my hand and led me inside. The weeks after were not uncomplicated. We were still 2 people sharing 900 square feet and a disagreement about where the good plates should live. There were evenings when we were both under deadline and short-tempered, and learning that loving someone means knowing the specific, precise ways they drive you absolutely mad. She left design files open on the shared desk. I rearranged the fridge without announcing it. We had one genuinely tense argument about whose turn it was to clean the green bin that was, underneath, about whether this place belonged equally to both of us. We talked about it. That became the rule we kept without having to say it much. No retreating into we're just roommates when something felt too large. No silence when honesty was cheaper. One Sunday in May, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop closed and a cup of tea she hadn't touched, looking out at the alley behind our building. "What?" I asked. "My biggest client cut the contract, taking design in-house." She didn't look at me. "I have savings. I'm not panicking. It's just a lot of income to lose in an email on a Sunday." I sat across from her. She finally looked up. "I don't want to be the person who doesn't tell you when something's hard." I reached across the table. She took my hand and turned it over, held it properly. "We'll figure the money part out if it comes to that," I said. "But mostly, I'm glad you told me." She looked at our hands for a moment. "This is strange," she said. "Living with someone you." She stopped. "Someone you." I waited. "Don't finish it for me." But the corner of her mouth was moving. "I wasn't going to," I said. "I was waiting." She looked at me. "I love you," she said. clear and factual, like she was reading something she'd already verified. I've known for maybe 2 months. I didn't know how to say it, because it felt like a lot to hand someone while you're also splitting the hydro bill. I was quiet for a moment. Camille. You don't have to. I love you, I said. I've been drafting it in my head since January, and I kept waiting for a better moment than a Sunday kitchen with an untouched cup of tea, but I think this might actually be it. She stared at me. Then she laughed, the kind that's more relief than anything else. She stood up, came around the table, sat in my lap with her arms around my shoulders. Kitchen table Sunday, she said. Very romantic. It really is. She pressed her forehead to mine. For the record, I've been in love with you since you switched to chamomile so I'd have something to take. I thought you didn't know I knew. I figured it out by week 2. She kissed my cheek. You're a terrible liar, Beckett. It's one of my favorite things about you. 8 months after the wine. 6 months after Harvard Street and the bad hallway, light and cold hands on a March evening. We moved Camille's drawing desk into my spare room and cleared out her bedroom, and for about a week, we kept saying her habit. Until one morning she said our room, without thinking about it, looked startled by what she'd said, and then looked at me. Yeah, I said. That was that. The mug, the one she'd been using to take my tea, sits on the second shelf now. She wrote something on it in Sharpie that says the original crime scene. I told her it was dramatic. She said origin stories deserve documentation. She still takes my tea sometimes. I still make too much of it. Last weekend, we walked through Kensington Market in the late afternoon just to walk, and she found a print she liked at one of the places on Augusta, a botanical illustration, pale green and blue, and stood in front of it for a long time doing the quiet calculation of whether to buy it, and, when she put it back, I went in after she stepped out and bought it. She told me later she'd cried a little, which she immediately attributed to dry winter air. It's in our hallway now, next to the framed picture of the mug she had printed on canvas as a joke Christmas present to herself. The window still sticks in summer. The recycling bins remain a weekly negotiation. The landlord eventually fixed the hallway light after Camille's 4th call and gave us 2 months credit on parking as compensation, which we don't use because neither of us owns a car. Some evenings I make tea, and she comes and finds me in the kitchen and reaches past me for the other mug. Her mug, right there on the shelf, and I don't say a word. She fills it and stands beside me, and we look out at the Palmerston Alley while the kettle finishes, just talking about nothing much, and I think about all the ordinary mornings I missed because I was too busy maintaining a careful distance from the best thing that was ever going to show up at my door, with paint-stained jeans and a slightly crooked enamel flag pin and an opinion about dishwasher loading. Love doesn't always arrive when you're ready for it. Sometimes it moves in quietly, labels its food, burns candles down to the tin, argues about bike lanes in a city that keeps getting them wrong, and waits with more patience than you deserve for you to finally admit you switched to chamomile on purpose.